Thanks. And Teddy, so just jumping right in, the kids, you're probably liking the messaging there, right?
Yeah, we got to win that ninja kid over.
Yes,
but, yeah.
exactly. I just want to jump in here, though. I mean, very basic. What the heck's going on this presidential election?
Well, look, I guess I think. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Thanks all for being here.
Yeah.
I think the reality of the country is that it's pretty deeply divided and it's pretty closely divided. And so, I think part of what you're asking is like, why is it so close? And
I'm asking, like, why is it so weird and bizarre?
Right.
And what's going on? I know it's close.
Yeah,
I
right.
can follow the polls, but really, what's at the heart of this?
Well, I think Donald Trump is at the heart of why it's so weird and bizarre. I mean, there's an alternative universe in which Cruz wins or Rubio wins, and what we're having is a much more normal back and forth between a progressive Democrat and a conservative Republican. And because of the way the primary process works, because of the way the Republican primary process works, I mean, I was going to say I don't want to sound like a partisan hack, although I guess I sort of, am here in my capacity
right?
as partisan hack. And I'm happy to discuss some of the things that people may think are wrong on the left. But I mean, in terms of on the right, he was able to win that primary against 16 competitors, on the virtue of his name recognition, on the virtue of his, it's interesting. He's an extremist when it comes to immigration. He's actually not quite as extreme as most of his competitors when it comes to the existence of a social safety net, at least as pertains to sort of, white voters, middle-class white voters. And so, he sort of had a unique cocktail of positions that allowed him to win the nomination. And then, he comes with a history that is just bonkers. And so, why is there a Republican nominee who openly praises Putin? Why are we talking about Playboy, adult videos from the early 2000s? It's because of Trump. And so I think it's easy to,
as Broderick pointed out, was a little absurd.
So I think it's easy to say, well, there's something really fundamentally wrong with politics in this country, and clearly there are a few things that are fundamentally wrong. But I also think it's important to remember Donald Trump is really an aberration. I didn't love and certainly didn't vote for and really worked against McCain and Romney, but Donald Trump doesn't have a lot in common with them. And one hopes, and I'm sure we'll keep talking about this, that the next Republican nominee, whoever he or she may be, won't have a lot to do with Donald Trump either.
Yeah. So it seems on the surface that Donald Trump isn't as organized, doesn't have the ground game that a traditional political campaign has had. What he does have, and what he's been able to control very well, is Twitter. Mm-hmm. So how do you combat that as a strategist working in the Clinton campaign?
I hope he tweets more. I think he should tweet every day, between multiple times a day, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning. I mean, in all seriousness, I think that, and we were just talking about this, there's been this notion that he's like really good at the internet or good at Twitter, and I think that's a really flawed notion, and I think the events of the past week pretty much put that notion to bed once and for all, I think. He's good at getting a lot of attention and a lot of retweets, and I would say that anybody running for president who retweets white supremacists and picks fights with ex-Miss Universe winners and all of that is going to get a whole lot of attention for their tweets. But what he's not doing is building an organization. What he's not doing is conveying actually persuasive messages to anybody but the sort of 38 or 40% of the country who are with him no matter what he does. And so, I think the idea that, it's like not all publicity is good publicity, I don't believe that, and not all retweets are good retweets. And I think the ironic thing is, I think his Twitter account and just that whole, sort of candidate unplugged vibe that he has probably served to his advantage in the primary, certainly got him a lot of attention, got him a lot of news cycles, got him favorable coverage to the subset of the country that is a Republican primary voter. But the majority of the country, and I think we might wish that it were a 70% majority of the country, and it's not, it's a 52, 51, 53% majority of the country, is disgusted when he says what he says about Latinos and veterans and women and immigrants and everybody else. And the fact that he's got this unhinged and unscripted Twitter account is part of why he's the most unpopular nominee in the history of the country. And one of the interesting things I think is the very people that he disparages are the people who under-index in the traditional media and over-index in social media. And so, if cable news and, sort of newspapers circa, whatever, 1995, sort of over-indexed with white men, well, guess what? Social media over-indexes with women, African Americans, and Latinos. And those are the people that Donald Trump disparages and tries to sort of step on. And so that's why I think it's a total misread to say that he's winning social media. He's actually losing social media in part because he's outnumbered there. And social media gives voice and a platform to the very types of people who disdain the way he talks about them.
Yeah. Yeah, Heather, I know we were talking a little bit about just the media in this cycle, and you touched on it, Teddy, in terms of the role that they play. I know you had some thoughts about how that comes into play here as well.
Yeah, so I'm super interested in what you were just saying and thinking about if I were a media company, right, one of the traditional media companies, not a Twitter or a Facebook, how would I think about how to grow my market share? Right now, they're treating Donald Trump's Twitter account as if it were the event of the day, and so they cover that as if it were news, and that's giving him, this vaunted earned media that he likes to talk about, and we and sort of the normal public have thought, oh my gosh, how's that working? And I think that's John's question. But is there a way for what you talked about, the over-indexed quality of social media, to start bleeding over into the earned media space? Are you guys working on that, or is there a way that some of the traditional media outlets should think about that to grow their market share among these growing demographics, as opposed to what we have today, which is the shrinking demographic that they're trying to maintain?
Yeah, we have no success when we try to tell the media what to do. So I don't know that that'll work. But I think a couple things. First of all, I think if there's an increasingly meaningless distinction between old media like the New York Times and newer media like BuzzFeed. Big difference between those companies and a Facebook and a Twitter. But you see the Times actually having a really excellent digital program, excellent sort of understanding of what sorts of content gets shared. Sometimes I think to the detriment of the conversation, because it's not necessarily good, or I can take out the necessarily. It's not good, in my opinion, if media companies perceive their role as being to chase traffic. But I think the sort of smart old media companies are increasingly behaving very similarly to the BuzzFeeds and the Mikes and the Voxes. I think there's a lot going on here, and we can talk about all of it. But one of the things I think is going on that I think goes to your question about sort of the indexing is that and I think this also is part of why so many of Trump's voters are feeling kind of not satisfied with the state of the country, is that if you look at what a Vox does, or a Mike, or a Fusion, or even increasingly the New York Times does, it's representing a diverse array of voices. It's representing the kind of voices that used to get no traction or no oxygen whatsoever. And I think that exercises a pull on candidates. I think interestingly, Hillary Clinton isn't always sort of covered or perceived as being a real progressive, and yet some of the things she said about, just for example, transgender issues, even about race, I think go farther and are more sort of the contemporary progressive conversation than what President Obama has said, and he's, of course, beloved in progressive circles. And so I think, we're all sort of in the same ecosystem, and I think, the sort of new media companies, as well as, Facebook and Twitter, are lifting up these voices, accelerating the pace to which the conversation is becoming more respectful of, and, and in agreement with a younger and more diverse generation, and that's exercising a pull on at least democratic politics. And I think that's also engendering a reaction, a sort of a counter-reaction on the Republican side, which just can't believe that this is the dialogue. And I think that's part of why Trump takes such joy in sort of flouting PC culture. I think that's what that means.
Can I follow up on that,
Yeah,
John?
yeah, absolutely.
There's been a lot of press about sort of Facebook's filtering and bringing AI into that and moving away from the human curators of your news feed. And one of the things that I was thinking about in preparation for this panel was we accept that Fox and MSNBC have a partisan slant, but we get very upset if we think that a Facebook is favoring one candidate over the other or one worldview over the other. More of the inclusive sort of, multiple genders, gender fluidity, whatever it may be. How do you think of that when you think about these companies that we don't think of as media companies, but really increasingly are the source of all of our news and the truth for many people?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a huge issue, and there's virtually no policing function whatsoever. There's not even transparency into how the algorithms work, as everyone in this room knows. And I think that's a cause for concern if 100 million people or 150 million people are getting their news on Facebook every day, and we don't even, forget about being able to influence, don't even really understand how that news is being filtered. I guess my point of view is, look, as a Democrat, I would love if Facebook's algorithm had a Democratic slant. That is not, in my opinion, ever going to happen. I do think that these companies need to take seriously, they need to take truth seriously. And I think one of the things I think has kind of gone sideways in terms of how the internet is affecting the culture, in my opinion, and I think it's never been more clear than in the past couple months as the Trump phenomenon has played out, is that the internet, which is so sort of magical and beautiful in its ability to connect people to information, provide education to people, provide knowledge to people, is also a way that people are receiving misinformation. Gross misinformation, stuff that is objectively not true. I mean, I'm not talking about spin, I'm talking about made up facts. And that's happening on Facebook and Twitter. So, I don't know exactly what they should do, but I think it is a problem for them, and I think it's a problem for the culture if you've got 80% of the Republican Party, or I should say 80% of Trump voters, who still believe that President Obama wasn't born in the United States to this day. And they're receiving that information on Facebook, and Facebook's got a non-transparent algorithm by which they do it. So I don't think it's about left or right. I do think, I think legitimate, truth-based conservative views, of course, need to be, just as sort of favored by the algorithm as legitimate truth-based progressive views, but truth-based is important.
So, Teddy, what do you watch, listen to, or read to get reliable political information?
Well, we have a variety of sources. I mean, I personally am a Twitter super user, at least in presidential election years, but it's really important that we all keep in mind that Twitter is not a representative sample of the United States. And so, I think I speak for all of us on the campaign when I say we watch cable, we read newspaper clippings, we obviously have a...
I said for reliable information. There was
I think for news, look, I mean, Twitter is the go-to, and for an understanding of what people think, we have a opinion research function that's really enlightening and really interesting, and I think, by the way, is helping me understand the ways in which the news distribution business is changing. So this is like one of the most interesting things, and this is actually an anecdote from a couple years ago, so it's only accelerated since then. Dan Pfeiffer, a great guy who was President Obama's senior top advisor in the White House for a couple of years, was talking about a particular thing that happened in the 2012 campaign cycle and said it was just one of these minor things that kind of was discussed on cable news and whatever, and there had been focus groups conducted the night before, and one of the things that you do in a focus group is you ask open-ended question, what are you hearing about? What's a piece of news related to the campaign that you've heard in the past couple of days? And whatever this thing was, everybody in the focus group had heard about it. And he said, the equivalent thing 4 years ago or 8 years ago would have been a kind of thing that 5 or 10% of the cable news watching United States would have heard about, and 95% of the United States wouldn't have heard about. But because of the internet, basically, people are hearing about more and more things.
Yeah.
And this is happening now. I mean, it is amazing. You can do a focus group and say, what are you hearing about? And people will say, well, Trump sent that tweet to Miss Universe at 3 in the morning, and there's a level of political awareness, partially, I think, local to the Trump phenomenon, but partially general because of social media, that is unprecedented.
Yeah, I want to jump back to, because you touched on it a little bit, but it was really interesting from when we did our pre-brief conversation, just kind of your shift. When you got into politics and you were working with Obama, I mean, you were looking at the internet as kind of this great savior, an equalizer. It was going to lift all boats, and And in our conversation last week, you've kind of turned on this a little bit. So elaborate a little bit more on what's happened and why you're not as positive on where things are headed.
You know,
Not to be a downer here
Yeah,
before
no,
we go to cocktails, but
yeah, right.
we do have cocktails coming up, by the way.
You know, I'm still basically positive. I think the internet's been an overwhelming force for good in the world. I think, by the way, you know, we, or at least those of us who live in the United States, look at this from an American perspective. Think about what the internet does for the developing world. So I'm basically positive about it and optimistic about its ability to get better. I do think, you know, there's two things. I've been thinking a lot about two phenomena happening on the internet that I think are problematic and really brought into relief in the current political situation. One is that I think the internet is really good at accelerating you, the user's awareness of and exposure to injustices and outrages and offensive bad things in the world. It is less good at giving you tools to do something about them. And so there's been this imbalance where we are more aware of bad things and feeling maybe more helpless than ever about them because our exposure to the one is outpacing our exposure to the other. And I think, you know, that's a mixed bag. I'm not I would never suggest that people don't have a right to be exposed to things like police shootings and all these other things that are creating disharmony in the country. But it does create a sense of despair when you see that stuff and you know you can't do anything about it. And Congress doesn't work, and you know, even state governments don't seem to work. And so you're just in a constant state of pique about what's going on in the country and feeling helpless. And I think that's a real problem. The other thing I think is that you know, the internet, which as we were just talking about, it is you know, the best tool in the history of the world for the dissemination of information, for low-cost access to information, no-cost access to information, education, and so forth. You know, it can also be a place where, you know, and it can be a place where people organize around things like the Obama campaign, or criminal justice reform, or LGBT rights, and these are good things. It's clearly also a place where people self-organize around, you know, like the alt-right, and you know, this resurgent crypto-fascism that's occurring in Europe, and you know, guess what, is occurring in the United States as well. And so it allows people to, you know, sometimes under a veil of anonymity, self-organize, spread ideas, get those ideas out to wider and wider universes when they used to be, you know, totally taboo. And you don't want to be against, you know, the right of people to have ideas and to spread ideas, but I don't know that, you know, the sort of no-cost spreading of racist, sexist ideas is a great thing. And so, you know, I think both of these things are happening clearly on the internet right now, and I think they're clearly part of what is powering the Trump phenomenon. There's other things powering the Trump phenomenon too. And that's really worrisome. So, you know, I think big picture, look, it's a good thing if people have access to friends and connections all around the world. Again, access to information, access to power, access to have a platform and a voice and make their voice heard to the kinds of people who used to not have to listen to them. But we've got to do something to sort of iron out these problems, because they're pretty real.
And speaking of that, and because we've been talking about Twitter a lot, I am following the Twitter stream here. Use the hashtag GeekWire Summit. And if you have a question for us up on stage, feel free to pose it there, and I'll try to incorporate it into the Q&A.
So what you were just speaking about made me think about this audience and what we all like to do, which is innovate and hopefully come up with ideas for how to make things better, but also products that we can all benefit from and sell. So talk a little bit about how you see things changing over maybe the next decade, both in terms of how we can give people the tools to affect political change by working together. There's an app that I saw recently called Brigade, which didn't look perfect to me, but looked interesting in terms of allowing people to connect online, debate issues, get like-minded people together to, you know, to work on a particular candidate's race or something like that. There's also a number of tech folks, particularly from the Bay Area, Sam Altman and a few others, who are coming up with voter registration mobile apps and are moving toward voting online as well. And I think we've got a local company that's working in that area too. So it would be, and then we had the panel on AI, you know, so maybe I just give my bot my ballot and let the bot, mine my social media to figure out what I really think and vote for me. But where do you see sort of technology taking us maybe in a positive direction if we're at this moment of ultimate angst right now? Can we all develop our way out of this in some sense?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it's really complicated. I don't think that there is an answer, obviously. But, I think, first of all, I had the honor of participating in a conversation once with, I'm stopping myself because this sounds so name-droppy. But anyway, I had the honor of being around President Obama while he was talking to, not Sam, but people a lot like Sam and people who you all in this room know about this exact question. And one of the things that I feel really strongly about is there's a demand side problem for change. It's not that there are so many people with such strong desire to get involved in politics, get involved in issues, change the country, but no one's figured out an app to allow them to organize and do something about it. People feel despair about the situation and not enough desire to do something about it, especially because, in an era where just about everything in life is getting easier, it seems as if getting laws changed just gets harder and harder and harder. And so that's why, this is a little bit off topic, but that's why, I think it's so interesting and not really surprising that San Francisco and Oakland are two of the places on earth where the municipal government participation is at its highest. I think because people look at municipal government and think, that's something I can do something about. That's like achievable. Congress, I don't know what to do about. But so I think you've got this problem that laws, at least at the federal and by and large the state level, are very difficult to change. And so, people just feel there's not a hunger to change it. And so, I don't know what the technology solution is. Over the long term, I can't come back to anything other than education, because I think, what is it that creates? What is it that changes hearts and minds? What is it that would change the demand side of the equation for positive change? It's going to have to be better education. It's going to have to be exposure to better and more accurate information about what's wrong in the country, and then we got to do something about the way the political system works. But that's a separate kind of thing. So I think I think Brigade is awesome. I happen to have a few friends who work there. I think it's one of a small handful of apps that are trying to take the people who do have an interest in putting time and energy and social capital up against making the world a better place, especially around politics. But the problem is that those people are the minority, and someone's got to come up with solutions that do something about the rest of the country. So I don't know what shape that takes, but I think I really feel strongly that the reason we have not seen more social change is not that there's pent-up demand and no app to channel it. We got to do something about demand, and that's why I think that's why I'm drawn to things like Khan Academy. That's why our campaign has been a content machine. Just trying to do something to sort of change hearts and minds and get people invested, because that's to me where the problem lies.
So tell us a little bit about the technology operation within the Clinton administration. What does it look like? A lot of our folks out here run technology companies. They probably want a snapshot of what the team looks like, number of employees, what they do, what have you.
Clinton campaign, I hope you mean, since there is not currently a Clinton administration.
Did I say administration?
You did say administration.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
Here come the. I guess our hashtag is getting spammed by Trump supporters. Now I'm really going to hear it. So yes, I'm forward-looking there.
So we've got a tech team of about 70. Tech in our lingo encompasses full stack eng and product and a couple of UX UI designers, and then there's a bunch of visual designers on the digital team, which is a separate but closely related function. And we're doing really cool stuff. I think this election has been so much about Trump that the sort of the under the hood stuff about the campaigns has gotten less attention than it did the last time.
Well, this is the audience to talk to.
But
they're going to love hearing about that stuff. What is it? Yeah.
Gosh, I think it's always helpful to think about our work in sort of 4 buckets: organizing, communications, fundraising, and then optimization, which is sort of different because it undergirds all 3 of the preceding buckets. But we've produced and also licensed. We have no desire to build stuff in-house if we can avoid it. You know, a full suite of organizing tools, a full suite of sort of communication and messaging tools, and a huge amount of fundraising utilities, and then have got an optimization, I should say data infrastructure and optimization function to make all of that better. That's really cool. So, I mean, you know, I don't even know where to begin.
Like Slack. I mean, we're using Slack right now to communicate between our team members right up here and myself on stage. So
we are all using Slack. So
yeah.
I mean, that would be an example of you know, where we're happy to use third-party stuff. And I mean, clearly we're not going to build a messaging app. So I mean, you know, just about everybody on the campaign uses Slack. We've also tried to encourage grassroots volunteers to use Slack. And even, I mean, last night there was a vice presidential debate, for example. We've got a network of a few hundred people who were influencers of various descriptions, either people with large Twitter followings or like comedians or visual artists or people like that. And we've got them on Slack over the course of the debate with a little bit of moderation from us, just sort of sharing ideas, sharing you know, facts about what may or may not be true, or you know, is not true that Pence just said. So we're you know, using Slack, and you know, there've been grassroots applications of Slack. So one of the things we found early in the primary was that grassroots supporters just self-organized on Slack to sort of share best practices around using our call tool and how best to, you know, what kinds of messages they found working. And so we're trying to encourage all of that and not be too top-down about it.
And it ties into a question that an audience member had. Which of those technologies is going to be most instrumental in winning the White House? Is there one that is extremely powerful that stands above the others?
You know, I'm going to give like a not sexy, not exciting answer, but you know,
Email.
you got to email and Facebook. I mean, you know, the reality is, it's interesting. Like, this is my third presidential campaign, and in between them, I've worked in the private sector, and you know, it always strikes me that it's not. It doesn't fall to presidential campaigns to be early adopters of almost anything, at least any kind of social network, because we've got limited resources and we're trying to reach the maximum number of people. It would be irresponsible to pull resources away from Facebook to get on, you know, some emerging app, even if we think it's really cool, even if we're all going to go form startups in 34 days to be the first to use them. You know, that's not the job of the presidential campaign. So, you know, we do tons of innovative stuff in terms of how we work, in terms of how we organize, in terms of how we fundraise, but in terms of where we go, email, Facebook, you know, Twitter because it's so political, you know, sort of the usual suspects. And I mean, email, since you threw it out there, you know, people don't like it. It's not sexy. It is still the most powerful tool in our toolkit. By far, it's where we raise about 70% of the money that we raise online. It's the single most important source of volunteer leads. You know, it's big.
Yeah. Just in terms of like email newsletters, email blasts to volunteers or donors?
As well as, you know, one of the things we're trying to do, and we're doing this on the SMS front too, is encourage distributed emails. So creating utilities by which organizers can email their 10 or 50 volunteers and not have it come from us. I mean, you know, I think the blast email, you know, just like HillaryClinton.com emailing X million people is hugely important, but of declining utility, and certainly doesn't give you that, you know, warm and fuzzy personal feel that, you know, a personal message from your organizer would. And so we're doing lots of blast emails, don't get me wrong, but at the same time we've built a tool that we call Megaphone that allows organizers, you know, they're out in the battleground states, they've got 10 or 20 volunteers who they're responsible for managing. Those volunteers themselves have 10 or 20 less engaged volunteers who they're responsible for managing. They're the busiest people in the whole campaign. And so one thing that they're not going to do is be sitting in front of their desk typing out really nice emails to each, you know, thank you for coming to our event last night, don't forget to come to the one tomorrow. And so we're trying to just make the one-to-one email more beautiful and more easy and more efficient for the volunteer, for the organizer, more pleasant for the volunteer.
Yeah, one thing you didn't mention, I'm sure you're doing just from what I've read, is just your ability to pinpoint and target very individual voters. I'd love to hear more insights on how you're doing that in battleground states like Ohio or Florida or North Carolina.
Sure.
And do you know down to the millimeter where those people are, and how are you targeting them?
You know, I think I'm on safer ground here if I talk about what the Obama campaign did, and you can infer that we may be doing similar things but smarter.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, every state in the union, as well as the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico and everywhere else, has a voter file. It's a publicly available document. It's a bare bones. I'll come back to what I mean by bare bones, but it's a bare bones document of every registered voter in that state or Commonwealth. It varies a little bit by state, but it's got name, age, address, registration status. In some states, it's got what party you've registered with. It's been a project of the Democratic Party going back to the Howard Dean years of 2004 to supplement that, and before that, but it sort of, people attribute this to the Dean years, to supplement the basic information that's publicly available with proprietary data that we've collected. So that could be, we had a conversation with you. You said I voted for Sanders in the primary, and by the way, I'm really concerned about climate issues. We put that in there. That allows us, the publicly available data plus the supplementary data allows us to generate models and score every single person in the United States along a number of different scorings. So the most basic is support score. If you're a 50, that means you are just about, in our estimation, 50% likely to be with us, 50% likely to be with Trump. 85, is 85 with us, 15 with Trump. But you can go deeper than that. We can look at persuasion scores. So an interesting thing is that not everyone who is 50 is, or in the 60 to 40 range is necessarily persuadable. Some people, based on their attributes, have a higher likelihood of actually responding to our messaging. Some people have a lower likelihood. Some people actually are reverse persuadable. If they see an ad from us, they are likely to be less supportive of us. And so if the name of the game is you've got a finite
Don't
number
send them
of...
the email blast.
Exactly. So you've got finite resources, you've got finite money, finite door knocks, finite phone calls that you can make. The whole name of the game is making sure you're making them as effectively as possible. You can even look at contactability, which is, people tend to volunteer on weekends. Some people are less likely to be home on a weekend, or some people are less likely to pick up their phone at a certain time of day or whatever it is. And so, certainly the Obama campaign put a lot of cycles into making sure that we had an understanding of every single person on support, persuadability, contactability, and all these other tracks. And that informs, I'm talking about the field program, literally, if you go volunteer in, I guess Nevada would be the closest battleground state, we give you a list of doors, and it's not every door. Obviously we're trying to save you time, save you the unpleasant experience of knocking on the wrong door. But also,
my mom's calling for Hillary in Ohio.
God bless your mom.
Yeah, she's
but also
doing the groundwork there.
Look, that's the most important thing, and it's interesting. There's not yet a technology that's more important than a person-to-person conversation, and that's a quantified fact. But it also affects where the candidate goes. Clearly, it affects media buys. Media in this election is really interesting because so much more of the inventory is addressable than ever before, and so that's sort of a massive project of every Democratic campaign. Has sort of been the backbone of the last few presidential campaigns, and is down to a pretty sophisticated science.
Yeah. Do you have a follow-up on that, Heather,
Yeah, so at this stage, I think, what did you say, 34 days?
34.
Who's counting,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah, we're all kind of waiting to get onto something new. But there's the persuasion battle, and then there's the get out the vote battle. And so you're just talking about the persuasion battle. Can you talk a little bit more about the get out the vote battle? There's some discussion about, again, apps that will give ride sharing to get to the polls, enable people to vote in other ways. What are you seeing there, and what's the campaign doing without asking you to give away any secret sauce?
We're doing a whole lot, and in a way, we have more control over the get out the vote stuff because it's less subject to persuasion. With respect to persuasion, you see a 30-second ad from us. That could be 30 seconds out of 20 minutes of election-related content that you see in a day.
Right.
So it's important, but it is only part of a mix, and the rest of that mix is out of our control. Whereas get out the vote, is really under our control to a large degree. I think, big picture, I think it's important to remember that most voters know what they're going to do. There's only maybe 5% of voters who are undecided, or persuadable, I should say, and somewhere in that same ballpark, or maybe even a little lower, who are what we call sporadic, which means may vote, may not vote. But so based on the modeling work that I'm talking about, we identify who we think those people are, and we've got a huge number of tools, both old school, like people taking clipboards and paper and knocking on doors, and some really cool stuff that we're doing with tech to make that work more efficient. And everything we are doing with tech is designed to make the old school stuff more efficient. We don't have new business goals as a campaign. We're trying to register voters, persuade people, turn them out to vote. Those are the things that we would have been doing 50 years ago, but we're trying to make that work better. So I think my favorite example, and from an engineering perspective, this is not the most complicated tool in the world, but boy, is it effective, is I talked about our distributed email tool a minute ago. So we're doing the same with SMS. So if any of you have ever volunteered, you go into a field office, you're able to check out, you get a list of 10 names you got to call, it's paper, you scribble in, so-and-so voters, said, no, they don't want to hear from us, yes, they do care about health care, no, yes, they're voting for Trump, whatever it is. It's a really important thing. It can be a really fulfilling experience. It sort of depends. But it can be tough for some people. For the volunteer, if you're someone who doesn't want to talk on the phone, a little bit shy or nervous, it can be tough. For the voter, most voters don't want an unasked for phone call at any time of day. So we've created this tool to basically allow volunteers to do SMS banking. So it's essentially the same thing. You get a list of names, except it's all on an app, and you text them instead of call them. And it's interesting. You might think in the abstract that the advent and the rise of mobile phones makes phone banking really easy and sort of increases the importance of phone banking within campaigns. But actually, if you think about it, if you're phone banking, you've got to be using your phone, looking at a script, and entering data at the same time. It's very hard to do that on a cell phone. It's impossible to do without headphones. And on an iPhone, if you've got to be going back and forth between the phone app and the and the phone banking app where you're entering the data, it doesn't work. Well, SMS banking does work on a mobile phone, and what we found is that it's effective. We found it's a better experience for many volunteers, not all of them. Many people really like to make calls, but it's certainly easier to do in 5 minutes at a time. It's easier to do, if you're at work just trying to kill a minute or two. It's easier to do if you're afraid of getting hung up on or don't really want to call a stranger. For the voter, you don't, again, really want an unasked for intrusion into your life, but you'd probably rather get a text message than a phone call. And we've been shocked at how many people are responding favorably to these things, and how there's been a total, basically minimum of people saying, had to get my phone number and don't text me, and for the campaign, it's an effective form of voter contact. We've sort of run that experiment and concluded that the data is cleaner, people do it faster, it's faster to text than to make calls, and so it's sort of a win-win-win. The campaign gets more out of it, the volunteers really like it, and the voters don't love it, but they like it more. And so these are the kinds of, but it's sort of, what it is, it's a technology layer on top of really old-fashioned organizing. It's one person talking to another person about when they vote, how they vote, why they should support Hillary Clinton. So I think that's a really good encapsulation of our whole philosophy here. We're not trying to impress anyone with whiz-bang, gimmicky apps. I mean, I think we've got some pretty whiz-bang stuff, but that's not our objective. Our objective is to take the kind of old school, tried and true ways that we know persuade people and turn them out to vote, and make them more beautiful, more pleasant, more scalable, and more effective and efficient for the campaign.
So as we saw in the kids video, you have maybe the 6 to 10-year-old Seattle voter locked up, but one demographic which has been difficult for the Clinton campaign is millennials. So why has that been such a tough demographic to crack, given that they are tech savvy and your campaign is quite tech savvy?
I had a feeling you might ask this. It's interesting. First of all, and I will answer the question, but I do think it's important to note, this is like a once every 4 years freak out on the part of the media and the Democratic Party is, are we losing our advantage with young people? If you look up clips from this day 4 years ago, you would have seen 100 suggesting that young people weren't that into Obama anymore. People don't know this, but President Obama lost white millennials to Romney. So the whole advantage there came from non-white millennials and was not seen as a sure thing until the votes were cast and people realized we'd done pretty well. So I mean, there was an op-ed in the Times, I think it ran yesterday. Our support is actually highest with millennials overall, out of any age cohort. And so everybody who's sort of wondering what's wrong with these millennials, that they may be backing Johnson or Stein, should really be asking what's wrong with these elderly voters who are backing Trump. That being said, look, we are definitely seeing higher support than we would like, or higher support than it has been the historic trend for third-party candidates, not for Trump, but for Johnson and Stein. I think we're going to be able to move the needle on that to some degree in the next 34 days. I don't think we're going to be able to make miracles happen. I think if you are a young person, your entire adult life has been lived in an era where it felt like politics was broken. You may remember the Iraq, if you're an older millennial, you remember the Iraq War. That's how you got into politics, and that was obviously a debacle, as was more broadly, I think the Bush administration toward the end anyway. Then you have the financial crisis, which, rightly or wrongly, is seen as the product of a system that isn't working, and a system in which the political and financial elites are all in cahoots. And so you've never lived in a time when the system as we know it has seemed to work. And so it's not surprising that people don't want to vote to sustain that two-party system. I guess my hope is, and I think some of this may happen after she is hopefully president, because I don't think you can really make miracles happen in 34 days, is she is a progressive. I think, she and Bernie Sanders voted the same way. I forget the exact number, like 94 or something like that % of the time when they were in the Senate. Most young people agree with her on the key issues. Donald Trump wants to get rid of a national minimum wage altogether. She wants to raise it. Donald Trump doesn't believe in climate change, thinks it's a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. She believes in science. Donald Trump wants to take health care away from people. She wants to get to universal coverage. And we're doing our absolute best to make sure that people understand that. And if they don't understand it now, I think they'll understand it in a couple of years when she's been the kind of president that she claims she's going to be.
So you said you think you can move the needle. Are there specific tools that you're trying to use to reach millennials versus the general voter?
I think it's a mistake. I think it's not only a misread. I think it's actually almost insulting to millennials to suggest that the problem is they just, either she's not cool enough or they don't know the issues. Millennials are really smart and they're paying attention to the election. And one thing they don't want is pandering. So nothing could be worse than if we spent the next 34 days having Hillary Clinton try to, sort of do millennial this and millennial that, and hang out with millennial celebrities, and these are smart voters, and they're voting along issues and values that they care about, just like everybody else. So we try to certainly look. I mean, we're on Snapchat, we're on Instagram, we're trying to reach them where they are, but most importantly, we're trying to convey that she is a progressive, she is a fighter. This is the woman who graduated law school and went to go work at the Children's Defense Fund when she could have gone anywhere. This is the woman who became First Lady of Arkansas and was an activist who fought to fix the Arkansas school system when she didn't have to do that, became First Lady of the United States and became an activist who fought to pass health care. When that failed, got right back up and passed S-chip, didn't have to do that, and we're just doing everything we can to get the core message about her core beliefs out there in front of people. We're not trying to do millennial tactics, per se.
Yeah, so changing gears just before we wrap up, there's been chatter from Trump and the Trump campaign about how this election is already rigged. How concerned are you that the election system or the voting system will be either hacked, broken, or, and then I'll have a follow-up to that, but how worried are you about just those things occurring in this election, that there could be some sort of hack of the system?
I think out of all the irresponsible things that Donald Trump is doing, that may be the most irresponsible, that he is suggesting that a United States election is going to be rigged. Now, ironically, there are efforts to rig the system by passing voter ID laws that disproportionately harm African American and Latino voters because they would vote Democratic if they could vote, by laws that make people who've been out of prison 20, 30 years, paid their debt to society for whatever crime they committed, still unable to vote. I'm concerned about those things. a rigging of an American election is not going to happen, and every single responsible Republican, it's going to be incumbent on them to speak up loudly and clearly if we win the next day and put to bed any notion that this thing was rigged, because it will not have been. And it's
Do you think that will happen? That the Republican forces will unite behind that message?
I'm not great at predicting what the Republicans are going to do. I think that when hopefully Donald Trump loses and is no longer the leader of their party, I would hope that they are going to want to be the first people to wash their hands of him. And anybody who feels any sense of responsibility to the country is going to have to come out and say that this election was not rigged. And interestingly, he always talks about it in Pennsylvania, which I think is really funny. Every public poll in Pennsylvania has us winning by like 8 or 9. I mean, how would you? It's not going to happen. It's an irresponsible and unthinkable concept. And I believe that Republican leaders will overwhelmingly say that they accept the democratically elected president of the United States, whoever she may be.
So this is a follow-up to that. Is there any hanging Chad issue that we need to worry about in this election cycle? Those millennials may not remember the hanging Chads, but this was the famous Gore moment there.
Look, I briefly mentioned on efforts in state houses across the country to make it more difficult for African Americans and Latinos to vote. That's a major issue. It should be a voting issue for everyone, including white people. We should be offended by this. I don't. I think many, as Donald Trump would say, many people are saying, that there is clearly an effort on the part of hackers who seem likely to be sponsored by foreign governments to influence the election, not by rigging the vote counts, but by creating embarrassment to the campaign, to the Democratic Party. I mean, I think everybody believes that that's what happened with the DNC hacks, and so those are areas of concern. But those are also sideshows.
But nothing mechanical that we've got. That's all out of our system now.
Look, I'm not. I work for the campaign. The elections are run at the state level. I can't, I can't comment on how 50 different state boards of elections are running their apparatus. But we are worried about convincing people that Hillary Clinton will make a great president and Donald Trump will not. And I have confidence that that'll be the reason we win, and that we won't have to worry about anything else.
So, quick question here for you. In what year do you think the majority of Americans will vote through a internet-based system rather than the traditional ballot?
Oh man, I wish it were now. And actually Hillary came out with a really cool plan for automatic voter reg. In my opinion, it's a disgrace that you have to go do a thing to register. Increasingly states are making that process, at least the progressive states that aren't incentivized to make it more difficult, are making that process easy and something that you can do from start to finish online. There are still states where you have to print out a form and mail it in. I mean, how many 19-year-olds own a printer? So Hillary has a really cool proposal to make voter reg automatic at the age of 18. I think that would be a great first step. As for when there will be online voting, now that would be something.
Said the majority of Americans.
That'll be a long way away. If I'm not mistaken, and I could totally be mistaken, there's only one country on earth that has universal online voting, and it's Estonia, and it actually has raised concerns about hacking. So I think that's in our future. I don't think that that's imminent, especially because under our Constitution, elections are administered at the state level. So that could be a couple decades away. But I think automatic voter reg and at least a universal right to register online without having to print and mail in a form, which is a poll tax. I mean, even if a stamp only costs 40-something, 50 cents, whatever it is, that is a poll tax. That would be a good first step, and I think that'll happen first soon.
So you've spent a lot of time with both Obama and Hillary. How are they different?
I have such admiration for them both, and I mean, honestly, the times I've been able to spend significant amounts of time with both of them are honest to goodness, I mean, I know I've basically been here again in my capacity as a Democratic hack, but I've been just some of the best memories I've got. I think, and they're both extraordinary. The thing about Hillary Clinton is that she lights up a room and she's really fun, and nobody knows that, and I get that nobody knows that, and she's not portrayed as someone who is warm and personable, but but she is. So here's a story that just happened. Not only is she, I mean, she is maybe the most unbelievably warm person, at least in that kind of position of power and that kind of just general busyness that I've ever met. So here's a story that just happened the other day. We put out this video of a woman who had breast cancer. She met Hillary just on a photo, or a rope line, excuse me, at a rally in Iowa early in the campaign. She was holding up a sign that said, 13th round of chemo tomorrow, hear me roar. And so that catches Hillary's eye, and she goes over and chats with her. And so she chats with her for a few minutes. The woman's name is Janelle, meets her husband, meets her kids. And over the ensuing year and a half of the campaign, well, one, Janelle has survived breast cancer, but two, every time Hillary's been to Iowa or to Des Moines, she's invited her backstage, and they've had a little exchange. And so we made a video out of this, and I had not been familiar with that story, so I didn't know how big a deal this was. So I sent it to Hillary and said, I don't know if you even happen to remember this woman, but you've met her a number of times. I thought you might want to see the video. She replies and she loops in her childhood best friend, a woman named Betsy Ebeling, and says, I love this, and I want Betsy to see it too, because I introduced Janelle to Betsy because Betsy also survived breast cancer, and now Betsy and Janelle are friends too. Now, Hillary Clinton is one of the busiest people in the world. She has met probably 100,000 people over the last year and a half. What makes her meet this woman, keep in touch with her, and introduce her to her best friend, because her best friend also survived breast cancer, and now they're friends too? I wouldn't have done that, and I'm not nearly as busy. So, people get their impressions of Hillary largely on TV and in the media, and the thing that nobody or not enough people know, and I guess I have this theory that they're going to learn it over the course of what I hope will be her presidency, but it'll be a slow process, is this is a woman who is kind and who listens and cares. And very few people are like that, and it's one of the things I think will make her a great president.
So come mid-November, how many electoral votes is Hillary going to have on it's November 8th, right?
I have no idea. It's November 8th.
November
270 is the magic
Yes.
number. I'd be happy with 270. That's as far as I'm going to go.
Unless Trump has 270.
I'd be happy with you were right. Yeah, right. We need the 270, and if
Yes.
we're able to get more than that, that's great. But we need 270.
Cool. Well, let's hear it for Teddy Goff of the Hillary Clinton campaign. Teddy, thanks for being here, and
My
Heather
pleasure.
Redman for helping on the session. Thank you so much, Heather.